Morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Welcome to Below the Surface. I'm your host, Stephanie Cavigliano, and here's my partner in crime, Darshna. Kamani.
Hey Stephanie, how are you today? And hello to everyone listening in today.
Yes, welcome all. Hi, Darshna. Good to be back. I missed last session, so feels like forever.
We missed you too, and it was a great conversation as well. However, before we get started, Thanksgiving next week, what's the plans?
You know I have plans, so big food plans, as always. Thanksgiving is actually my favorite holiday. So we're having a very small holiday here. It'll just be me, my mom, my brother, and my grandma, which I feel still very fortunate to have. And I will be baking a pecan pie, which is not something I've tackled before, but it's delicious. I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's very sweet. And it's one of my new favorite Thanksgiving treats.
I haven't tried it, but you're more than welcome to send some over across the pond. We'll be more than happy to give it a go.
All right, good deal. And you just celebrated Diwali, is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So I am all sweeted out. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm trying to get rid of the chocolates and the cakes and the Indian sweets out of my house. I think I am done for a while. Well, at least until Christmas anyway.
That's right. You get a little bit of a break.
Yeah. Detox and then go back to it.
That's what we do. 'Tis the season.
It is indeed.
Well, before we get carried away, because as you all know, we could talk about sweets all day, let's get back to the show. And we're really excited today to welcome our guest. So before we start, just a quick reminder that you can ask questions in the comment section below, or feel free to just say hello and let us know where you're watching from and what you are eating.
Most definitely. I like that. What you're eating would be really interesting to know. So in previous shows, we have covered a variety of topics so far, ranging from spearfishing to SD-WAN to MSPs, and more recently around Cybersecurity Awareness Month. If you missed any of them, be sure to go to the Barracuda LinkedIn page, and they are all there. Make sure you take a look. So on today's show, we will be covering a few more topics, from compliance to women in leadership, and something that is so relevant for today is a focus on looking after employees' well-being through a pandemic. With that in mind, it gives me great pleasure to welcome our guest for today, Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel of Barracuda, Diane Honda. Welcome to the show, Diane.
Thank you, Darshna. It's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome, Diane. Welcome to Below the Surface. It's really great to have you on. Now, for those who don't know you, can you please give us a little bit of background on your role at Barracuda?
Sure. I lead Barracuda's compliance, legal, human resources, and facilities organizations worldwide.
So that's an interesting role in this time. So how has the pandemic changed your role, both from a legal perspective as well as a HR perspective?
Yeah, the pandemic has created a challenge, and it's really hit both the legal side as well as the human resources side and the facility side. So it's been quite busy. And like many companies, we had to move our employees to a remote work, including our inside sales and technical support centers, which had traditionally been in office roles. And, unlike many tech companies, Barracuda manufactures our products in the Silicon Valley for our hardware appliances. And so we've had to have a team working, through this entire time on A/B shifts to keep our employees safe and to ensure that we could continue to support our customers with the hardware appliances that they need. So, to the credit of our manufacturing team and all those who supported him, we've been able to do that without disruption. And we've had our employees throughout this working, and it's been a challenge, but we're very happy to say that it's gone well throughout. And, we had to do this in what seems like then and now is just an ever-changing set of rules and requirements and guidelines that keep coming out, right? California just changed colors. For those in California, we live in a color system now. We just changed colors again, and nobody really knows what that means. And, we still have to make product, and we still have to keep our people safe. So we're trying to be flexible and nimble. And I have to say, just incredibly grateful for the level of resilience that our employees have shown through this time. I think the other challenge that we face is that a large part of Barracuda's culture is just being together and having fun with each other. And we always knew that was really a special part of Barracuda, but now it's been so amplified the longer this has gone on that we haven't seen each other. And so we feel like, the one thing that we have to keep doing is really try to keep connected. And we've spent a lot of time trying to do that during this period. And so, the only other thing that I think has really impacted us is really related to our customers and partners. Their needs have changed as well during this time. The products that we make, email, network application security, data protection, the need for them have really increased when you quickly go remote. And so we had to be there to keep our customers protected at a time when, unfortunately, there are just people out there, cyber criminals and others, that try to take advantage of things. So it's been a real strain. It's been an exciting and challenging time, I would say, both, to try to keep our employees focused, keep Barracuda's culture the way it is, and then just always be there for our partners and customers.
Now, with nearly everyone in the company moving to remote work, how has that impacted Barracuda specifically from a compliance perspective?
So Barracuda has always had a really strong information and security compliance program. And in that program, we have an internal team that conducts internal reviews. We have third-party external assessments, and we do vendor audits as well. And so we've had these controls in place both for our internal employee and Barracuda data, as well as for our customers' information. And, the remote environment immediately put these controls to the test, and they identified a couple of areas that really needed to be focused on. One was just the whole situation of endpoint devices, and really realizing that we wanted to make sure that anyone that was coming into our network from a remote environment had a device that the company provided and it was company controlled. And then the other area that really became important is just an increased awareness for our employees and others around, phishing and phishing attacks. Because with everybody working from home, we're expecting emails, we're expecting Slacks, we're expecting communication to come at us that way. And I think everybody's been trained not to click information from, a third party that you don't know. But, cyber criminals are getting much more sophisticated, and they're able to really spoof and make it look like it's coming from within the company. So just really making sure that people understand that before you proceed forward with an email, you really need to check it. So part of it is just reminding employees of that, increasing our training, and just taking a proactive approach in that area as well.
So a lot to take on and a lot of learnings. From your learnings, what should organizations start thinking about to ensure they stay compliant in this new way of working?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, as I mentioned, cyber attacks are on the rise. And, a catastrophic event like a pandemic, unfortunately, really does give people an opportunity to exploit this, change, because you didn't have all the time in the world to prepare every bit of control you wanted. So it's just going to be, you kind of have to make the leap and then have the rest of your compliance program catch up. So, you have to really be mindful of any way you can to secure your environment. And, from a hacker's perspective, stealing company data and, confidential information, as well as personal information, personally identifiable information, can be lucrative. And so some things that we recommend and we try to implement at Barracuda is, first and foremost, employee training. Employees need to understand the processes. They need to understand how they play a critical role in protecting PII. And so we try to train them on cybersecurity best practices. We do provide third-party security reviews, and I think that everyone should be very mindful of that. Service providers can be an extension of your own program. They bring knowledge, they bring expertise, and what they can do is they can try to attack you in sort of a white hat way, such that you can find things before a criminal would find it. The other thing that I think is really important is really inventorying your sensitive data. You can't protect what you don't know. So you need to know where all of your key information is, whether it's information from your customers or partners, whether it's your own employee data. And, over time, people put data in systems and they're just doing what they need to do to run the business. But it's really important that you, if you want to really protect it from a compliance perspective, understand where all of your data lives so that you can secure it. And then the other thing that's really important is just enabling multi-factor authentication. Passwords can be cracked. No matter how many times you train, people tend not to make the strongest passwords. They put passwords they can remember. So MFA is just a critical layer of security that you should definitely put in place.
So some folks have said that security really sometimes feels like a little bit of a blocker, especially when people are working remote and we have to take all of these additional security measures, and we're trying to be productive at the same time. So how can organizations ensure that these additional security measures are seen more as an enabler instead of employees trying to find loopholes around these security processes?
Yeah, it's a very good point, right? If technology doesn't work and it's not efficient to use, then people are going to find workarounds around it. And so they're not going to benefit from what you're trying to put in place. And so you always have to balance security and productivity. And I think the other thing that I've learned as we've spent more time, especially now dealing with this, is that people and our employees are really, really patient with the security controls that we're trying to put in place, the more they understand about the risks and benefits. So if they understand the impact an attack can have on the company and what that would do, then they are much more willing to, take that extra step and do that MFA so that they can help protect it. So I think employees always want the company to succeed. And so if we educate them on the risk and what the consequence could be, they get a little bit more patient and flexible with us. But in the end, it does have to be a balance. You really have to make it so that it's not so onerous to use, or they won't play.
I mean, that is really good advice. I think the more understanding employees have, I guess, the more they're likely to kind of put those practices in place. The other thing that's happened over this remote working change, and I've read in recent studies, is that a lot of organizations are moving to public cloud. So how does that impact organizations from a compliance perspective? What advice would you give organizations considering doing this?
Yeah, the public cloud has many benefits, but within the public cloud, it's really important to understand that there's a shared security model. So while the public cloud may provide an infrastructure level security, there still needs to be web application and human layer security on top of what you can just get base level in the public cloud. So it's important to understand that just because you've gone to the public cloud, that doesn't mean that you don't have to have a robust and complete security program. And the other thing I would just mention is that public cloud providers have that same human risk element and potential as anyone else. So many of the attacks can come through because something wasn't fully patched or something was left inadvertently configured incorrectly. The public cloud providers have that same risk. And so we need to make sure we put additional layers within all of our companies to benefit on top of what we can get from the public cloud.
So staying on the topic of remote working and security, we often hear that humans or employees or users are always the weakest link in the security chain. Do you agree with that statement?
I do. Employees are really the greatest asset and at the same time can create the greatest risk, and it can be, sadly, in some cases it can be malicious, but in many cases it can just be inadvertent. But when there is, a disgruntled employee who's unhappy with the company, there is a unique risk that, is out there. And it's something that I would say keeps most people who sit in the general counsel chair nervous at night, right? And so, we rely on our employees to stay vigilant for social engineering attacks, for phishing attacks. And we want them to understand that they are the last line of defense from what could potentially be a really, catastrophic attack on our company or any company for that matter. And so, we can put all these security and privacy policies in place, but if the employees don't understand them and follow them, then they really have no value. They're not valuable. So, the other thing I would say is that you have to have a culture where employees are comfortable reporting potential issues. And, if an employee is satisfied, then and they want the company to succeed, then they're more likely to speak up if they see something that's not right. So if you don't have a culture where people feel, committed to the company's mission and values, and that they feel safe in speaking up, especially to their legal compliance team, who's really trying to help the company succeed as well and not be that blocker you talked about before, but I think we all share the mission of helping the company succeed, then you're not going to get that information that you need before something happens. And, several recent incidents have highlighted that. And, people may be familiar with what happened with Tesla, but disgruntled employees do create a unique risk to the organization. And so it's important to make sure that all employees understand how they contribute to this, but also to make sure that if there is something that could go wrong, that people feel comfortable telling you about it before it happens.
I mean, as you say, it's obviously something that worries you being in general counsel, and something that does happen with the example you've just said. So how can organizations ensure this doesn't happen? Like, what are some of the steps they should be considering?
I think you really need to just make sure that you focus on your company's culture around sort of ethics and integrity, and just remind employees of the fact that they have a critical role to play and they're part of the system of checks and balances. And, we also always try to look for that single point of failure. And we do cross training to reduce the risk, because if you have only one person who knows something, who has access to something, that creates a huge risk, especially, either again, just a simple, mistake because no one else is able to look and double check it, or because that employee ultimately becomes unhappy with the company. And then, I think it's important, and we try to do this at Barracuda, is just make sure that employees understand that they are a key stakeholder in our, social responsibility and our culture. And, we and all companies really need to demonstrate a commitment to caring about employees and providing them positive experiences, so that they're always, wanting the company to succeed. A great business is not going to be successful without great people behind it. So it's really important, just not from a compliance perspective, but also just from where you want to work and creating that right environment, that, employees feel comfortable and feel like, the company wants them to succeed and cares about them.
So let's stick on the topic of people. If we shift more over to the human resources side of things, how has remote work impacted employees?
Yeah, remote work has been a challenge for employees, right? And I said before, a lot of Barracuda's culture is based around how much we care about each other and how much we help each other. In fact, if you ask people to describe Barracuda, many of them will say it feels like a family. It's much harder to create that environment when you're all remote. And at the beginning, I think it was a little bit easier, but I think it's dragged on longer, and I think it's longer than anybody had expected. So there are a couple of things that we've done. Just right before we went remote, we had implemented a peer-to-peer employee recognition system using a tool called Kazoo. And it allows employees to show appreciation for each other. And I will say people have really embraced that during this time. And if you go and you look at it for birthdays and work anniversaries, or just extraordinary efforts on projects, or just someone who helped them, it's a way to say thank you. And it's just been really nice to read those comments. And I think it's helped keep people feeling together. We also spent some time focusing on just the mental health of our workers. We've asked our managers and our HR team to really step up and engage with people. And if people are missing meetings or we haven't heard from them, and they haven't checked in, to really reach out to make sure that we didn't have anybody who's struggling with the separation, especially people that, when we were in those lockdowns that some countries are going back to now, they're single, they have no one else. So it's just really important to do that. And then we've also provided some tools and some resources to support employees, especially now with the work-life balance being all in your home. Many of us have children that are doing Zoom school in other rooms, and just trying to help find the ability for them to take a breather through, online, fitness classes, or, meditation, or just whatever tool we can provide them to be helpful. And then, one other thing that we've tried to do, and I think many companies have done this as well, is just do fun activities, happy hours, talent competitions, best home office setup, which clearly I did not win sitting where I am. But, anything we can do to get people to engage, to feel like they belong to something bigger, that's really important to us.
I mean, it really is a challenge, and I guess a bit of a mind shift of going from what you could do in the physical world and trying to replicate that virtually and still get that same feeling. So we've talked about culture and keeping that alive, and we've talked about keeping employees safe. Is there a way of finding a balance between the two of them?
Yeah, one thing that we have tried to do as well, and what we've seen as we've done this, is so you really have to focus on the people, and we've really put a great effort on that. But it's also just helping people feel part of something bigger. And what we have seen is that if we had a really clear and efficient process beforehand when we were all together in the office, then moving that remote was not all that difficult. But where our processes were very human intensive or had a lot of handoffs, that has been a struggle, right? So we've realized that, and we've really taken to how do we make a lot of these processes more efficient. And I think that will be one of the benefits that we get out of this, is just realizing how do we streamline and automate. One of our core values is succeed together, and that has really helped us as we've gone through this, because we've looked at the impact of what we're doing and how we can make it easier for the person downstream or upstream from us, and tried to really make things very, very efficient. The other thing that we did, which the timing again maybe just worked out similar to our implementation of Kazoo, we were starting to refresh all of our company goals and kind of what we were trying to achieve at the higher level, and we rolled them out as part of an employee development program. And with everybody so tactically and day-to-day focused, and almost like hour to hour, because some of our parents will say, I have 30 minutes before I got to get my kid on their next Zoom class, right? So with everybody so very focused, it was kind of, you were sort of losing sight of the bigger picture. So these goals and the process that we've gone through has really helped to remind everyone on the team, of our overall mission and purpose, and how the difference that they make every day contributes more broadly to the company and our customer success.
So Diane, excuse me, please keep going.
Oh, sorry. And the other thing I was going to say is that, ultimately the other thing that I think it's taught us, and I think every company is going through this, learning journey and coming out a little bit differently, but it's really taught us that, we want to go back to the offices. We don't see ourselves long-term as just a permanent remote work organization. I think we've learned a lot of things, and we will have remote work more than we did in the past. But overall, just in order to really maintain that connectivity and culture, we want to be flexible. But ultimately, I think we will go back to the office and let people, get that family feeling again, that we think makes, Barracuda unique and special.
Executive position and with a background as an engineer, what advice would you give other women who are thinking about making a move to the technology industry?
Yes, it's true. I don't really talk too much about my background because I have, I've taken on so many different roles in my career. But I started as a computer science major from Carnegie Mellon, and my first job was as a software engineer at Hewlett-Packard. And when I started, and even when I was in college, and then when I started in my job, there were not a lot of women in that field. And I think now the great news is that there has been so much more advancement of women in engineering and technical positions, as well as in our colleges and universities. And I think that's really a tremendous step forward. And, I tell my daughters, and I tell others who will listen, that the technology field is really a tremendous place for a woman, for everybody, but especially for a woman. Women, are collaborative, and they are creative, and they're very focused on results, and they multitask, and all of this fits incredibly well in a technology company, especially when you're trying to bring a complex solution to market, and add value for customers. So I think women should always continue to push for a technology career. And I also think it's important to understand that if you start with a technology career, you start as an engineer, you start in a QA function, whatever that is, you can use that technology background and migrate to different roles over time. I've held business roles, I've held the general counsel role, I have human resources, and each step of the way, I would say that technology background and just those skills I learned in that engineering discipline has helped me and made me more effective in each role that I've moved forward to.
I can definitely relate to that, and I agree with you 100%. I also have a technology background as a programmer, and like you said, there isn't that many women, or there wasn't that many women in the field to kind of look up to and to mentor others. So from your perspective as a woman in technology, as a woman of leadership, how can women support other women, or may not just be just women, how can men support women? What are the 3 top tips that really helped you that you would pass on to others?
I think it's super important that women help and support each other, especially in these challenging times. I have been really fortunate to have mentors and sponsors in my career that have had faith and confidence in me. And, I think about those people who have helped me when I think about sort of how I try to lead and what's personally important for me. So, the first one for me is really just to be grateful for those who have taught and pushed you to do more than you thought you could. Sometimes we let our own, especially women, we let our own self-doubts and lack of confidence hold us back. So if you allow someone else to push you and tell you that you can do it, I think that's just really important, and you should always let people help you with that, and just be grateful that they have done that for you. I think the other thing, along with what you said, Darshna, is just need to be really generous with your time and talents. I try to mentor forward to people to pay it forward. And, I have found sometimes that a really small act that I might do for someone, just a quick connection or whatever it is, makes a really big difference to them. And it didn't seem that much to me. So I just think it's important to always just be generous with others. And then I think, the last thing that I think is really important just to focus on is just to be determined and strong. I work hard for what matters to me, and I will always stand up for what I believe is right. And, sometimes that can be hard. And sometimes you have to really learn how to communicate a different perspective in a way that other people will hear it. And it's taken me a while, and probably it's still an ongoing journey to really get to the point where I can do that well. But I do think that if you believe in something and you feel like it's right, then it's worth taking the time to, communicate it and learn to do it in a way that others will welcome it and understand and be able to accept whatever feedback you have.
I think that's a great note to end on today. I've really enjoyed this conversation and learned so much. That was great advice, Diane. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you both for having me, and I hope everyone has a nice day and stays well.
Thank you so much, Diane. It has been an absolute pleasure. Also, don't forget to follow Barracuda on LinkedIn to see our previous shows, as well as to find out what's coming next on Below the Surface. I guess that just leaves us to say, until next time, have a safe journey.